Confirmed. I have a visual on the target. Yes, sir. Intersecting the target in 3, 2, 1. Hey guys, the Black Critic Guy, and I'm here today to give you a very interesting review on the anime Gunslinger Girl Seasons 1 and 2. Now, Gunslinger Girl actually has a very simple and basic story. It follows the social welfare agency, an organization that hides under the ruse of doing community service for the government, but actually is in charge of finding and dealing with impending terrorist threats in Italy with the assistance of their highly trained killer cyborgs that just so happen to be little girls. Now, I was recommended this anime quite some time ago by one of my subscribers, Fred Escalona, and you all voted for this anime to be one of the animes that I review for the month of November. And I'm not gonna lie, I've been pretty interested in seeing Gunslinger Girl for quite some time. In fact, I put it up in many polls before, hoping that it would win so I could watch it, because, I mean, it's a show about little badass girls wielding guns. That alone sparked my interest. And also, I'm a huge fan of the Girls with Guns genre of anime, Noir being the first ever Girls with Guns anime I saw, and still is my all-time favorite. It's a highly underappreciated anime, and if you're a fan of the genre, you have to see Noir. It's really good. And speaking of Noir, I felt like this anime had a mix of elements from both Noir and Corpse Princess, being that it's a show about these badass little girls who wield guns, but also have these male handlers that are always by their side whenever they go on a mission. And earlier, if you were paying attention or just read the title below, I said that this was going to be an interesting review. The reason for this is because, once again, I'm giving you guys a 2-for-1 special. 2 reviews in 1 videos. Consider yourselves lucky. Originally, I was going to review both seasons of Gunslinger Girl as a complete series review, but I felt like that was a huge injustice to season 2 of Gunslinger Girl, because season 1 of Gunslinger Girl is vastly different from season 2 of Gunslinger Girl, and it's because of this huge difference that I had to make 2 separate reviews for them. So let's begin by talking about the first season of Gunslinger Girl. It's boring! It was so mind-numbingly dull, guys. I was so uninterested in the story, the characters, the animation didn't really stand out to me. The only thing that really stood out to me in the entire anime was the opening theme. I thought that was a really good opening theme. It was somber, it was emotional, I liked that it was in English. It really stood out to me. Other than that, not much really stands out in the first season of Gunslinger Girl. Now, don't get me wrong, there were some good qualities to the first season. The first one being is I liked how they explored the cyborg girls. They are the focus of the anime, so I was happy that they were given a lot of focus in the first season. The first season is more or less an establishing season. It introduces the world of Gunslinger Girl and the characters, although it could have done a better job of establishing some of these characters. I personally liked some of the backstories in this season. They gave us some good insight on some of the characters from time to time, especially the cyborg girls. You get to see how they went from being these normal, average girls to these cybernetic beings who go through rigorous training to be these well-oiled killing machines. Some standouts would be the backstory dealing with Kleiss and her handler, which I thought was the best backstory in the entire season, and also Angelica and her handler Marco. I also thought that some of the relationships were solid in this season. The strongest one being between Henrietta and her handler Jose. They had a strong bond with each other. And I liked the relationship between the cyborg girls. I felt a strong kinship with them. They all understood each other because they all are going through the same thing. But even with all those good qualities, it still comes off as a by-the-numbers dull anime. And there are many reasons for this. First off, the animation. It is completely dull, and the toned-down color palette is not doing it any favors. In fact, it's working against the anime. It makes it look even more bland, more generic. And as for the character designs, although I did like some of the designs of the girl characters, Triel being my favorite and the most unique out of all of them, most of the characters, both female and especially male, look so similar to each other. There is very little variation with the character designs. And sometimes I would just mix them up or mistake them for another character. Like sometimes Rico looks very similar to Henrietta and I would think, oh, is that Henrietta? No, that's Rico. Whoopsie. And most of the male characters, they all look similar. Like they once stood in a line and I couldn't tell who was who because they all look the same. The stories in this season, with the exception of 2, are very episodic, but they don't come off as very compelling or interesting. They just come off as generic and boring. And the characters, most of them are just as dull and bland as the anime itself, and many of them are really underdeveloped. Like you don't really know much about their character, their backstory, they're just there. That's it. And continuing off of this dull and bland motif, we got the voice acting. There is no energy. There is no life. There is no effort in any of the performances given by the voice actors in this season. And I have no idea who's to blame. Is it the voice actors who I know for a fact did better voice work in other animes, or is it the script that they were given? Was there just no life, no energy in the words that they were saying? I have no idea. And it's that phoned in voice work that took me right out of the anime, because if the voice actors don't care what the characters are saying, then why should I? But probably this season's biggest sin was with its action. It's not compelling. It's not captivating. It's not energetic. There's nothing special about the action in this anime, and it doesn't even happen that often. It happens now and again, but it doesn't even matter. The action's just not thrilling. And that is a huge problem when your anime is focused on little girls with big ass guns killing people. If the action's not fun, you have failed in your job as an action anime, and you should be ashamed of yourself. Guys, there's nothing more to say about the first season of Gunslinger Girl. As an avid fan of Girls with Guns anime, it's a disappointment. As a fan of action animes, it's a fail. As a fan of well-told animes, it misses the mark. And that's why I'm gonna give it a 2 out of 5 stars. It is an easily forgettable anime, and you should just skip it. Do not even watch the first season of Gunslinger Girl. Why do that when you could watch the second season of Gunslinger Girl? And now begins my review of the second season of Gunslinger Girl. Now I'm gonna be completely honest. After seeing through the first season of Gunslinger Girl, which took me 5 whole days to watch all 13 episodes because it was just unbearable to watch, it felt like a chore to sit through, I just wasn't looking forward to the second season. In fact, I pushed it off for a day because I felt like the second season would just follow the same tropes and the same path as its predecessor and be nothing special as well. Imagine my surprise then when I saw the first episode of the second season. I was hooked. I was like, holy shit. Talk about pulling a 180, and it truly did. This is one of the first animes I've seen that has pulled a 180 from season to season, because it went from being my least favorite Girls with Guns anime to now one of my favorite Girls with Guns anime. And that's exactly why I cut it into 2 reviews, because I got a different vibe from the second season than I got from the first season, and to bundle the second season up with the first one just felt like a travesty because of how great the second season is compared to its predecessor. And I know it was made 6 years after the first season, so of course they're gonna try to remodel and do better with it, and I'm so happy that they did, because guys, I really liked the second season of Gunslinger Girl. It fixed all the problems that I had with the first season. And in my opinion, you should just skip the first season of Gunslinger Girl and jump right into the second, because they do explore many of the elements that are talked about in the first season to catch you guys up if you missed out on anything. So you could almost say that the second season's actually a reboot. So skip the first, watch the second, because it's excellent. In the first season, since it was very episodic, it never felt like the story was going somewhere, like it was heading towards a conclusion or an endgame. It felt very stagnant and static. That is not the case here in the second season, because it builds up upon itself, the story, until it reaches its final conclusion, the end game, the end fight that we were waiting to see the entire season, and it was executed so well. That is how you end a story. That is how you give full closure and resolution. And another great thing about this anime was the fact that it had a great balance of being story-centric and character-centric, giving attention to both equally. Not only do you learn about the world, but you also learn about the people in the world. And speaking of the people, all the characters, main, supporting, antagonists of the season, were interesting and relevant to the story. They all had something to contribute. They were all three-dimensional characters, each with their own development, their own backstory that delved into their past and gave us insight as to why the character behaves this way or why a character thinks this way. I mean, they delve into Marco's backstory, which they also talked about in the first season, but they gave us more understanding and closure to his story. We also delve into Josei's backstory, and we learn so much about this character. What makes him tick? What is his motivation? What is his ambition? We learn all of these things that was never mentioned in the first season. And they also gave my favorite character in the anime, Triel, who's voiced by one of my favorite voice actresses, Caitlin Glass, not only more screen time, but also a very interesting character arc with a very satisfying resolution. It was executed so well. And the relationships in this season are strong and convincing. I actually felt a genuine bond between most of the characters in this anime. My favorite one being the relationship between Angelica and Priscilla. I thought it was just so adorable and nice. But not only does the second season focus on exploring our main characters and developing their relationships, but they do the same thing for the antagonists as well. They explore their backstories. We learn more about their characters, and the relationships between them are strong. It shows the dimensions of these characters, not portraying them in a black and white fashion, but multi-layered. The most fascinating antagonist of the series, and my personal favorite, was this guy named Pinocchio. This guy was a freaking badass, and I just loved his character arc as well. It was so interesting, and again, well done. The animation is solid, and they got rid of that toned down color palette and actually gave some color and life to the animation. And the character designs were much better this time around. I could actually tell which character was which, except for one tiny little problem that I'll address soon. The action this time around was actually thrilling and exciting to watch. I was captivated by the action scenes. The last two episodes had the best action in the entire series. And finally, the voice acting. This was the voice work I was waiting to hear in the first season. There's more life, more energy, more emotion in the performances this time around. And I actually felt like the actors put more effort into portraying the characters' voices properly. I was so happy to hear that, because I know they can give good performances. I've heard them all do good performances before. I was just waiting to see that here in this anime, and they finally delivered in the second season. So I guess it really was the script's fault. Damn script. But as much as the second season is a vast improvement compared to the first season, I did have a couple problems with it. The first problem that I had, and you might see it as a very small and insignificant problem and I should just ignore it, but that's the thing, I couldn't ignore it. It was bothersome to me throughout the entire second season, and that is with the characters' eyes. For some reason, I just didn't like how their eyes looked here in the second season compared to in the first. And I wasn't a huge fan of the character design in the first season, but I did like how they did their eyes. It was very cold and big and dim, almost giving off that feeling of a cold-blooded killer, which these girls are. Although they do have emotion, they will kill at an instant if you give them the order. in the second season, their eyes looked more, for lack of a better word, anime. It felt very moe-like, you know, very gentle, very nice, very compassionate eyes. And I just didn't feel like that fit the characters that they were. They're supposed to be cold-blooded killers, you know, not hesitating to take the shot. But with eyes like that, I feel like there's more sympathy in there. And I don't know, it really bothered me. Another problem that I had, and again, you might feel like this is such a small and insignificant problem, but it just really bothered me, and I feel like I'm repeating myself, but that is dealing with one of the characters' backstories. In one of the backstories, I felt like a character was kind of shoved into this backstory just for the sake of connecting characters with each other, and I felt like that was unnecessary. The characters don't all need to kind of know each other in a sense, and they all could have their own backstories that don't connect to each other, and it was a little bothersome. Like, out of all the stories in the second season that I felt like was never forced or shoehorned in, this was the only element that stood out to me that I felt like they just threw it in there like, yeah, make these two characters kind of know each other, huh? They know. Again, completely unnecessary. And the last problem that I had with this anime was the lack of backstory and explanation on the character John, Rico's handler. Out of all the characters in the second season, he is the only character that never gets his own episode that focuses on his backstory, what his personality is like, explore a bit of the character. I mean, they kind of hint a little bit about his character here and there in the second season, but he never gets his own standalone episode. In fact, him and Rico get the least amount of screen time in this season, in my opinion, or at least get the least amount of development, which really sucked because I want to know more about this character. He is a fascinating character, and I want to know what makes him tick, what goes on in the mind of John. But besides what some people may consider small and insignificant problems, I overall adored the second season of Gunslinger Girl. It was leagues upon leagues better than its predecessor. I'm so happy about that. It fixed all my problems. It was exciting throughout. I had so much fun watching it, and I think it is a solid, if not one of the best Girls with Guns anime I've seen in a very long time. And that's why I'm gonna give the second season of Gunslinger Girl a 4.5 out of 5 stars. It is one hell of an anime. But anyway, what did you guys think about the first and second season of Gunslinger Girl? Did you absolutely love and adore both of them? Or did you like one of them and hate the other? Or did you find both of them really boring and uninteresting? You really didn't give a shit about them? And let me know, what is your favorite Girls with Guns anime? Comment below and let me know. And until the next video comes, guys, if you would like to be a part of the Black Critic crew, hit that subscribe button, like this video if you really enjoyed it, and I'm Tony Watt II, the Black Critic Guy. Till then, peace, YouTube.